The oldest stories aren't always written down. Sometimes they're whispered. On the shore of Lake Ontario stands a limestone house that has often outlasted wars, epidemics, economic booms, and the transformation of a tiny harbor settlement into the city of Oshawa. For nearly 2 centuries, it has remained where it was built in the early 1840s, its thick stone walls absorbing the sounds of generations who called it home. The family that lived here saw years of profound change, watching sailing vessels give way to steam, horse-drawn wagons yield to industry, and a frontier community become a town. History tells us who lived here. It tells us what they built. It tells us when they died. But history doesn't always explain what comes after. Because long after the family was gone, caretakers, volunteers, and museum staff began sharing stories. Footsteps in empty rooms. The unmistakable feeling that someone was standing just behind them.
You're never really alone in Henry House.
I'm Nadine Bailey, and this is Haunted Canada. Today, we travel to Oshawa, Ontario, because before you can believe the ghost story, you have to believe the history. And for that, I'm joined by Lisa Terech, communications coordinator, as she shares how the oldest building in Oshawa isn't famous for what happened there. It's famous for what some people say never stopped happening. This is Echoes of Henry House. Long before there was a town called Oshawa, before limestone houses, shipyards, or roads traced the shoreline of Lake Ontario, this land was home to Indigenous peoples for thousands of years. The north shore of the lake was part of a network of travel routes, fishing grounds, and seasonal gathering places used by successive Indigenous nations. Wendat communities established villages nearby along a trail known today as the Scugog Carrying Place, which linked Lake Ontario to Lake Scugog and the waterways beyond. Archaeologists have traced village sites along Harmony Creek that date back to the late 1300s. Today, this is the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, within the Williams Treaty Territory, and part of the broader homeland of the Nishabi peoples. When European settlers began arriving in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, they entered a landscape that already had a long and complex history. One of those settlers was Thomas Henry. He was born in County Down, Ireland in 1798 and arrived in British North America in 1811, eventually settling along the north shore of Lake Ontario, at a time when the community was little more than scattered farms, forests, and a small harbor. He served as a clerk in the reserve militia during the War of 1812. Like many early settlers, Henry wore many hats. He farmed the land, operated a general store, built and owned sailing vessels that traded across Lake Ontario, and became deeply involved in local civic life. His business interests connected Oshawa to ports throughout the Great Lakes, helping transform the village into an important center of commerce. But Thomas Henry's influence reached beyond business. He served as a justice of the peace, was active in local government, and was a prominent member of the Methodist community. In an era when communities depended on the leadership of a handful of individuals, Henry was one of the people helping to shape Oshawa's future. Around 1830, he purchased a piece of land, but by then, his first wife Elizabeth had died along with his infant daughter. He had 5 sons to take care of, so Henry didn't stay single for long. He soon met and married a woman named Lorinda Abbey. From all accounts, the two were happily married, and together they had another 10 more children. Around 1840, he built the limestone house that still bears his name. Constructed from locally quarried stone and overlooking Lake Ontario. Lisa Terech from the Henry House Museum said it was both a family home and a symbol of permanence in a rapidly growing community.
Our museum is comprised of 3 historic houses. All 3 of these houses are still standing on their original foundations. So big fancy way to say that we didn't pick them up and move them to our site. They are standing where they've been built for almost 200 years. The museum itself opened up with just Henry House. It was the Henry House Museum, and it opened in 1960 as a community museum. We have always been, even though our name has changed a few times through the years, we have always been a community museum that looks at telling different aspects of the history of Oshawa. Henry House is the oldest of our 3 museum buildings. It was built in around 1840 for members of the Henry family, hence the name Henry House. It was lived in by the Henry family, various members, through until about the 1910s. By the 1910s, it's being rented out to a few different families. And then by 1920, the building is acquired by the city, at that time it was the town of Oshawa, when they were creating Lakeview Park, which is the beautiful Lake Ontario fronting park where our museum is located. They have never moved. So the 3 families who would have lived in these houses, they all would have known each other. A common question from visitors when they hear 3 different buildings are like, oh no, how far apart are they? They're literally, I could stand at one and throw a rock and hit another one. They are literally a stone's throw. So these 3 families would have known each other, 150 years ago. We've got some wonderful items in the archival collection where you see these connections between the 3 families. So it makes us a little bit unique in that historic house museum kind of village, I guess.
The 3 homes on site are the Guy House, which was home of the harbor master James Odgers Guy, the Robinson House, which was built by the Robinson family in the mid-1850s, and of course, Henry House.
So altogether, there were 15 kids who would have lived at any given point in Henry House. There were 11 boys, 4 girls, and a lot of visitors, when I'm giving tours of Henry House, get stuck on that 15 number. They'll look around and think, oh, where did all 15? They couldn't have all possibly fit in here. And I mean, they are right. There was a really big age difference between the oldest and the youngest, so not all 15 would have lived in the home at any given time. But yeah, you also, you touched on a lot of the salient points of Thomas. He was a farmer, so much of this park that is a beautiful lakefront park would have been his farm at one point. He was a harbor master for a few years, and the harbor, again, right outside his front door, so we had a nice short walk to work. But he was quite proud of his other profession, where he was a minister in the Christian church. It was a Protestant denomination. They were known as the Christians. And within that role, he preached locally, but also was quite good about keeping up correspondence with others within that denomination. He would often go to conferences, and that was what he really prided himself on, was being that Christian minister.
Thomas Henry died in 1879.
Not too far from here, there's a small little graveyard. It has an informal name of the Port Oshawa Pioneer Cemetery, and that is where Thomas, both of his wives, and a few of his children have been laid to rest, as well as his parents. So it was a very small little cemetery which was being used by those who lived in this little lakefront area.
Henry House today is an example of a Victorian family home, furnished as closely as possible with items connected to the family itself.
We've got a few items that belong to his youngest daughter, Jenny. She was born and married in the house. Quite a few years in between those events, obviously. We have a chair which belonged to Thomas. We have a desk which belonged to his grandson. And then very interestingly, we have a teacup which was donated. And there's this lovely little clover motif at the bottom of the teacup. A few years ago, we did an archaeological excavation with the local university, Trent University, Durham, and they came and they excavated around the house, and a bit of pottery that was found had the exact same clover motif on it. So that was a really interesting connection between something that we have that is a family object and something that was found on the property by archaeologists.
Henry House isn't a typical settler farmhouse either. It was built in the Regency cottage style, a central hallway with rooms branching off on either side, a layout popular in the late 1800s. Originally, it was a single story, only built of gray limestone. The second story, framed in wood, wasn't added until sometime after 1861, which means the house that stands today is quite literally 2 different centuries worth of construction stacked on top of one another. Over the next several decades, generations of the Henry family lived within its walls. They witnessed Oshawa evolve from a lakeside village into a thriving town, surviving economic hardship, political change, and the arrival of railways and industry. For nearly 2 centuries, this small cluster of buildings on the Lake Ontario shoreline had quietly held onto its history. And yet, for all that historians know about Thomas Henry's life, some of the stories told about his house can't be found in any ledger, diary, or land deed. Those stories tend to happen during quieter moments. That's when history echoes through its walls. Historic homes have a way of collecting stories. Some are preserved in letters and census records. Others survive because they're told and retold by the people who spend time inside these walls. Henry House has no shortage of those stories.
Now, I should have maybe said this at the get as well. You are talking with the skeptic. So I am more than happy to share some of these stories. I've actually had a few things happen, 1 or 2 things that have happened to me as well, but I still do have that little bit of a skeptical lens.
Museum staff have described hearing footsteps on the upper floor when no visitors were present. Volunteers have spoken of doors opening and closing on their own, unexplained cold spots, and the unmistakable feeling that someone is standing just behind them. Others have reported catching the fleeting glimpse of a figure in period clothing disappearing around a doorway, only to find the room empty moments later.
The one that I like to start with, I think happened in 2012. We had a summer student and she was working over in Henry House, and her job that summer was doing an inventory of the textile collection that we have stored on the 2nd floor. That area is not open to the public. It is just storage for really cool artifacts. And it sounds so cliche to say, but it was a dark and stormy day. It truly was a really gray day. And I remember this student was working in Henry House, and I said to our then executive director, it's really dark, it's really gray. Do we need to be concerned at all for this student working over there? And then sure enough, by lunchtime, I'm sitting and I'm chatting with this student, and she says to me, so I was over there and I was working and I saw a little girl. I'm like, okay, tell me more. And she was working in this one little room, and there's a hallway which leads to a staircase. And if I'm remembering the story correctly, while she was working, she kind of turned her head and she saw a little girl poke her head out along that hallway. She just kind of moved on with her day. Obviously, she spent a little bit more time over there, and I don't believe the girl, I don't think that she had any ill intentions.
The 2nd floor isn't the only room in Henry House with a reputation. One story, repeated by several people over the years, centers on Thomas Henry's study. Employees have recalled feeling an intense sense of unease whenever they enter the room, describing it as if they were intruding on someone else's space. Whether coincidence, suggestion, or something harder to explain, the feeling became part of the house's folklore.
One of my responsibilities, especially when I first started out, was the opening and closing of the houses. And when you close this one room, it involves drawing blinds and turning off lights, and the room that we're exhibiting as the study gets very dark. And I don't know if this was my own, and here's the skeptic trying to rationalize coming in. I don't know if it was my own unease of being in this dark space that was playing into this, but I felt very uncomfortable in the study. It was a case of I was getting in, I was getting out as soon as I could. I just had this uneasy feeling anytime I was in that space while I was closing up. I could be doing a tour, I'm with visitors, it's fine, but when it was dark, I needed to get out. And a few weeks pass, and I'm talking to my coworker about this, and I said, yeah, I'm just feeling uneasy in the study. It had passed by this point, but I said I was feeling uneasy. And she turned to me, she goes, oh my goodness, I was feeling the exact same way. I felt, and this is her telling this, like she felt compelled that every time she was in that space closing up specifically, she had to say good afternoon and goodbye to Thomas. And in that space, there is a portrait of Thomas hung up very prominently on the wall. So anytime that she was in that space, she felt like she had to be greeting him and acknowledging him and then leaving. And it only really happened during that particular month. It was September. And I remember this because that happened to be the same month that Thomas passed away in 1879. So if that has anything to do with it, I'm not sure. It could be a coincidence, but it was very bizarre that I was feeling this deep unease in the space at the exact same time that another coworker was feeling that same uneasy feeling. At first, I was chalking it up to my overactive imagination, and I think that could be also why I'm partly a skeptic, is I got this overactive imagination, and maybe I have to be skeptical about it all so that I can comfortably go in and out of these spaces every day. But to have this other coworker have the exact same experience that I was feeling, it was weird. I've got no other explanation for it other than perhaps respecting that we both felt the same way and acknowledging that we both were having the same experience.
The study and the storage room aren't the only places in Henry House where staff have caught something out of the corner of their eye.
If I'm remembering that story correctly, that was one that was told by one of our tour guides, and she was giving a tour, I want to say. Now, perhaps I might be misremembering, and I have a feeling I know what stories you came across. So please correct me if I'm misremembering in any way, but I believe this one tour guide was giving a tour, and she kept getting glimpses of the edge and the hem of a brown skirt coming in and out of doorways. That was the story that I remember.
Lisa said that unexplained phenomenon can also be found in one furnished room that represents where Thomas and Lorinda would have slept. It is located just off the kitchen, and it was a choice made by the museum because Lorinda struggled with her mobility in later years, and the stairs to the second floor would not have been easy for her to climb.
In the bedroom, we have a bed. It's not a rope bed with like a lot of these settler homes will show. It's got the slats and everything, but we do have the feather tick on top of it. And for some reason, our curator would go into that space, and every so often it would just be kind of divoted down as if somebody's taken a break and has sat down and has left their bum print behind on this feather tick. And of course, it's a feather mattress, so it will keep that impression of weight going down on it. She'd refluff up the bed, and then she would go back into the space a little while later and see another impression on the bed, which really none of us tour guides are sitting down on the bed at any point. So how the butt print was being left in this feather tick, we don't know. We have since kind of changed the way, and we've got more of a foam mattress topper on there right now, so there hasn't been any lasting sitting impressions, but it's strange things that we can't explain away. Nobody should be sitting on that bed, so why is there a distinct downward impression on this feather tick? It's very bizarre. When I am asked if these houses are haunted, I usually say I'm a skeptic. Nothing's really truly happened to me. I will no longer be a skeptic if somebody pops their head out and says, "Hey, how's it going?"
Lisa's mind still hasn't changed, but for others, there are the sounds. The creak of footsteps across old wooden floors after the museum has closed. A door latching when no one else is inside. Voices that seem to carry from another room, only to fade into silence. None of these experiences prove the existence of ghosts. Old buildings settle. Wood expands and contracts. Museums, by their very nature, invite our imaginations to bridge the gap between past and present. But what makes the stories endure is that they aren't usually told by thrill seekers. They're told by the people who work here, the volunteers who lock up at night, the guides who know every room by heart, the staff who have spent years separating historical fact from local legend. And many of them will tell you the same thing. They can't explain everything that happens inside Henry House. Some staff lean into his stories. Others, like Lisa, stay firmly unmoved.
As a skeptic also, it's easy for me to try and explain away, but I think if we were to do that as well, we're almost discrediting something that somebody has experienced and has moved them. So we don't want to just dismiss away, because it takes away from somebody's legitimate experience of what they have truly experienced. So we don't want to do that.
The unknowing has helped the museum keep the doors open. The Oshawa Museum runs an annual Halloween event at the harbor for families, and there is a paranormal investigation with a local team planned for mid-October 2026. For nearly 2 centuries, Henry House has watched Oshawa change around it. It has witnessed the transformation of forests into farms, a harbor into a thriving community, and a village into the city we know today. Its walls have sheltered generations of the Henry family, preserved the belongings they left behind, and become one of the few places where visitors can step inside Oshawa's 19th century past. That in itself is remarkable. Historic houses are more than collections of furniture and photographs. They're repositories of memory. Every worn stair, every hand-hewn beam, every window overlooking the lake connects us to the people who lived ordinary lives in extraordinary times. Thomas Henry could never have imagined that the house he built in the 1840s would one day become a museum. Nor could he have known that visitors would come not only to learn about his family's contributions to Oshawa, but to ask a question that has become almost as enduring as the house itself. Is it haunted? The truth is, we don't know. What we do know is that the stories of those who have experienced unexplained things within its walls have become part of the house's history. Not because they can be proven, but because they continue to be shared. Ghost stories have always been a way of making sense of places that feel larger than ourselves. They remind us that old houses carry more than stone and timber. They carry memory, imagination, and the echoes of the people who came before us. Thank you for joining me as we explored the Henry House in Oshawa, Ontario. And a special thank you to Lisa Terech, Communications Coordinator, for taking the time to talk with me. I really do appreciate it. If you want to visit Henry House, I will link their website in the show notes. Do you have a ghost story, a paranormal encounter, or true crime? If yes, email it to me so that I can cover it and share it with the listeners on this podcast. Email me through the website hauntedcanada.com. If this episode gave you the chills in the best possible way, please consider supporting this show by buying me a coffee. The link is in the show notes. Every coffee helps to keep these stories coming, and if you want to go even deeper, stay tuned because I will be adding a Patreon very soon. Haunted Canada is sponsored by the Edmonton Ghost Tours. I will link the website in the show notes. Haunted Canada is written and produced by me, Nadine Bailey, with senior producer Dila Velasquez. Production and sound design is by Rob Johnston, with help from Corey Price. If you'd like to support this podcast, please follow, share, and tell a friend about this podcast. We would also appreciate a like and a 5-star written review. If you're on Spotify, tap follow. It helps more people find these Canadian ghost stories. Also, you can follow me on our different social media platforms, including TikTok and my YouTube channel, Haunted Canada. Hey everyone, got some exciting news. I'll be hosting a haunted and paranormal tour of Ireland from May 22nd to 29th in partnership with my friend Joanne at Expedia. We'll be visiting haunted locations, staying in haunted castles, and exploring many historical places, all while delving into ghosts, hauntings, and paranormal activity, so be sure to bring your EMF readers with you. All information, including the itinerary and how to book, is on my website, hauntedcanada.com. I can't wait to explore Ireland with you, and remember, space is limited, so book early. Thank you again from all of us at Haunted Canada and Curious Cast. Have a good night, everyone, and stay haunted.